right?
Yes, I guess.
So why do it at something that isn't funny?
Santa frowned. He turned to Bonnie for help. She shrugged. He looked to Jonas.
Santa!
Shouted Jonas.
Ho, ho, ho?
Right.
Said Etta.
Anyway, about that hug.
She opened her arms again and moved towards Santa. Santa looked worried. Etta reached where he was standing by the fireplace. She put her arms around him and then put her arms through him, like he was a ghost, like he wasn't, in fact, there.
Okay. Good hug. Lovely. Anyway, got to rush. No rest for the non-wicked.
And he vanished. Disappeared.
Santa?
Said Jonas. Etta's mum looked at Etta.
She
said.
You've scared Santa off.
Well, it's not my fault he's a hologram.
At which point, Jonas burst into tears. Chapter 2. Winterzone.
Hi, Gary?
Said Brian Leaf.
Yes, sir. Gary Baxter.
No need to tell me your surname.
Said Brian.
We go by first names here at Winterzone.
OK, sir.
And obviously chuck the sir thing. Call me Brian. Brian, fact, is what I prefer, as I'm sure you know.
Gary did know. He had worked for Winterzone for 10 years, and every time Brian Leaf came on stage at the Winterzone Global Conference, beamed every 1st of November to 100 countries simultaneously across every social media platform, a massive screen always came up behind him with the word Bry on it. Plus he left the stage the tune of a song by Winterzone's in-house band called I'm Dreaming of a Bright Christmas.
OK, Bry.
It still sounded weird, though, no matter how many times Gary heard it. Bry had his usual expression on his face, smiley and kind, but with a sense that he had looked in the mirror for a long time and worked out what a smiley and kind expression was. He was completely bald, and so it looked like someone had painted a very studied, smiley, kind expression on a big egg. Next to Bry stood his personal assistant, Raisa. She looked like she always did, like she was thinking of absolutely nothing. Gary knew, however, that this wasn't true. She was thinking of absolutely nothing except how to serve Bry and Winterzone. She was dressed, as ever, in an all-white uniform, but also, as ever, had with her a small bright orange handbag strapped across her shoulder. One of her hands always seemed to be resting lightly but firmly on the clasps of this bag, which were a shiny green colour. The clasps, that is, not her hands. They were standing in the snowy space, an enormous room in the centre of the Winterzone building. The Winterzone building stood on its own in many acres of land on the edge of a large city. It was over 50 stories high and built in the shape of an enormous Christmas tree, an enormous concrete Christmas tree. It had lots of windows, but pride of place went to a very long one that circled the entire front of the top floor of the building. It was made of coloured glass, red and green and white, and drawn into it was the word Winterzone TM, surrounded by snowflakes and Santavatars, which is the name for the holographic Santa that was appearing in Etta's flat, and sleighs. You could see this from almost any point in the city. Also in the snowy space were the other members of Bry's personal team. There was Hamnet, a man who only wore black, and who always brought into work his all-white cockatoo, also called Hamnet, who was currently sitting on his shoulder. Then there was Festa, a woman who seemed to Gary to be about 14, but was actually in her late 50s, her teenage appearance being entirely due to her diet of supervitamin shakes, one of which she was just finishing. It was very bright green and had the words Veggie Healthy on the bottle. And finally, there was CWX-25. CWX-25 was a robot, but looked like a human, who was programmed to think mainly about Christmas. The robot wore a red and green sweater with reindeer and snowflakes on it.
Sit, Gary, sit,
said Bry. Gary looked around.
On the beanbag, obvs.